Hi, this is Earl, and if you've been with the channel here for a while, which a while in terms of the most recent incarnation of Tenacious Sports is just about a month now, but if you also followed the videos that I made at Tabletop Baseball Plus, you'll know that one of the things that I've really put a lot of effort and heart into is the Tenacious Golf Tour. I've already run 2 tournaments here on the channel since moving back here. And before I got any further, I thought it would be worth trying to put together maybe a short series of videos that are kind of like how-tos or info sessions on how History Maker Golf works. Because if you're going to be new to the channel, if you're new to the channel, or maybe you just bought the game and you'd like to find some information about how this game works, I'm going to start pretty low level. I want these to be relatively short. I don't want them to get so drug out that it seems like you're having to watch an hour and a half video. You know, we're just going to try and get hit with this one, sort of the high points of where this starts. Hopefully in a few days I'll make a second one, which we'll talk about towards the end what will be on that. But this is going to be the basics, and that's what we're going to be calling it here. So if you're here for this and you really want to learn about History Maker Golf, please hit the like button. Feel free to share it anywhere you want. If you're interested in seeing this fictional tour that I'm talking about, feel free to subscribe to the channel. We're going to have lots of other sports stuff coming as well. But let's go to the why History Maker Golf. And I always kind of like to start here because I feel like, some people might just be saying, I want to find a golf game. And I'm not here to completely advocate 100% for the game. There's lots of golf games out there for your tabletop. For the most part, what I would say is what makes History Maker Golf pretty neat is the condensed hole by hole play. It's from what I've seen in other videos of other golf games, a lot of times it's shot by shot, which some people really want to have that feel of like having a map of the hole and you're moving a token around. This isn't going to be that way for the most part. This is going to be condensed. It's what I like to consider or call the History Maker line. What I would call it is the progressive check method. And maybe there's another term for it, but for me it just kind of seems like that. Let me just do this here a little bit. There. It just seems to make sense that it's what it is it's like the timing equals the importance of it. With like History Maker Baseball, the pitcher comes first in most of the checks because he's the one that is sort of like delivering the pitch and has a lot of bearing on if that pitch is going to be in the strike zone, right down the middle, on the corner. It's going to be this or that. And so for golf as well, it's like this progressive check method. What we'll see once we get to the game book, which will be in episode 2, is for a good number of the sequences that we deal with here, the progressive check becomes your driver, and it could be the driver really, and the ability of the driver really dictates the way the hole goes. If that fails to dictate it, then you check the iron, and then you check the next iron potentially on a par 5, or then we end up at the green with some putting stuff. But it's like the timing of things makes a big difference as far as whether that is going to be the prime, and that relates directly to how the dice roll goes. And in these games, it's traits versus results is what I would say. So a lot of games, it's more like you get an immediate result based on just the roll of the dice, the combination of the dice that are generated. It leads you to a specific result. I play a lot of Stratomatic baseball on this channel. I have in the past. That you get 1 white die and 2 red dice and those get you pretty much most of your chances are just going to be told to you this is like a ground ball, you know. So in this case, it's traits, and so they are based when it's a real life set on statistics, but it's a little bit more general. And the other thing that's kind of nice about these traits is that it's a mixture of positive and negative checks. So just because somebody has a negative trait doesn't necessarily mean that every hole is going to end up being, they're going to be trashed because they have this trait that is just like dogging them. Because it could check that if there's a negative, or it could check if there's a positive. And sometimes if the positive isn't there, it's negative for them. But sometimes, you know, there's a lot of what I would call just you get some of each, and we'll see that there are ways that the game kind of evens it out for the poorer golfers in certain ways. You know, there is a chance for luck to be involved in this. There's also lots of strategy points in this game which create risk and reward. You know, we'll talk about chip usage in later episodes, and when we talk about chip usage, it's like you can use chips, and the chips are talked about like confidence. And when you use your confidence up in trying to get a shot the way you want it, sometimes when you do that, let's just hypothetically speaking, if you do that, the results may not, you know, so this is like kind of like this, you know, genie in the bottle. You know, you get your 3 wishes. Sometimes you get unexpected consequences of what you thought you were going to get. So just because you're doing what you think is a positive play doesn't always work out that way. And the other thing that's great about this, as with most of the Play products, and I don't know if I've mentioned it yet, this is from Play Games. I've talked about these guys in many of my videos. So you spell that P-L-A-A-Y. Probably should have written it out here so you can see it. And play.com is their website where you can buy these products. And if you have already, then you're watching this because you want to find out more. But you have the opportunity for fictional play. And, you know, other companies could create fictional cards, and some do. But I think the trait methodology here is something that really affords an opportunity to install traits that aren't had on a periodic basis. That's another thing that's pretty neat about this that we'll talk about another time. You know, these things can sort of evolve. In one tournament, you might have this trait, and the next tournament might go away. Or you might have a trait for multiple tournaments, and it could really benefit you greatly, or it could hurt you. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities for that kind of stuff. You know, this method here, this game, it is excellent if you want to carry out a tour. I've carried out 2 seasons of what amounts to 2 parallel tours. One is kind of like the PGA, and the other is kind of like what's known now as the Korn Ferry. And, you know, we promote golfers out of Korn Ferry to Tenacious Golf Tour, and et cetera, or, you know, out of Slacker to TGT, kind of like in real life. And so you can get a lot of tournaments done relatively quickly. It took, the second season took me a while because I have a lot of games, and I play quite a few different projects, and it just takes up some time, and I don't get to focus on this. If you wanted to carry out a 30 or 40 tournament season and just plow through it, you could probably get it done in 3 or 4 months, you know, if you just kept your mind to it. So easy, quick tour execution is available through this. And there's lots of different methods of play. You know, the rule book is pretty clear that you could use this. I mean, most of us are going to use it for stroke play, but there's match play as well. And some people like to, when they do a tour, incorporate a match play tournament. I haven't done that yet, but, you know, you could even do, like, simulate the Ryder Cup if you wanted to. So lots of different things that you can use this for. Next up, let's just talk about the game parts. Again, this is like really, really high cut at this point. You're going to get 5 dice. you're going to get, and I wanted to put pictures, but I didn't, but you're going to get 4 D6 dice, so 6-sided dice, and they're going to be white, black, silver, and green, and they each do carry a certain level of singularity importance. The black and the silver are kind of similar in certain ways, and the green and the white are pretty much sort of like the front, the white's sort of the front end of the process, and the green's kind of like the back end of the process. So, and then you get what I call a D2, a decider die. So it's a 6-sided die, but it has 3 faces that have a dot and 3 that do not have a dot. So it's basically a coin flip. If you get in the game itself, you'll get 2 courses. You'll get Kapalua Plantation, which they call Palm and Orchid, and you'll get Augusta National, which is called the Champions Course. But there's over 50 play courses now, and there's a lot of user creations out there. I have a couple that are out there, but there's many. And if you go to the Delphi forum for play, the play community, Gideon Eames has put together pretty much a compendium of the various courses in an Excel spreadsheet, so you can go to town if you want and be able to play just about anywhere you want on some of the best courses in the world, whether they're play official or not. Golfer sets, again, he also has an Excel sheet that has a lot of this information as well, but Play sells quite a few sets. There is one that comes with the game itself. I forget, it might be the 2000s stars. I'm going to show a couple of the cards here when we talk about them, but you got some that are like the guys from the 1800s, your old Tom Morrises are in. There's a set for that. There's a set for the 80s. There's a set for each season of the last few years. You can get them. Plus, there are fictional sets, which is what the Tenacious Golf Tour is based on. You get the game book, which is, I'm going to show limited portions of that in future episodes. My intention is I want to be able to show you how the game works. I don't want to go too loose with the intellectual property of play. There are several charts that come with it. There's like for out of contention golfers, it's kind of like a quick play chart once you get towards the end of a tournament. There's other kind of like smaller adaptations of charts that are in the game book. You'll need a score sheet. They come with a score sheet. You can find others that are available for download. And then there's the chips, the blue and the red chips, which are kind of like the strategy component, and a marker for the current golfer out on the course. So that's the game parts. Now let's just get into the beginning part of the mechanism. Again, I don't want this to go on too long. So let's just kind of talk about step 1. And step 1 of this process is, every time you take a golfer to a hole, you're going to roll all 5 dice, the 4 D6s and the decider die as well. I just roll them all at the same time anyway, but really the first foot off the gate, or the first check is going to be the white die, and that will dictate whether or not so there's 2 mechanisms that are typically involved. Well, we'll call it 2. There's a third that we'll talk about in the next episode, but most of your opportunities are going to come from these 2. It's going to be the course control mechanism and the golfer control mechanism. And I keep looking over here because that's where my screen is. The whole difficulty, probably the thing that will influence a lot of your strategy decisions, and also kind of like gives you a kind of like eye in the sky view of, if I'm going to look at a course card, what is laying in front of me, what I would call the course control number, and I think that might be even what Play calls it, is the kind of like the key to the whole difficulty. The number of faces that lead to course control is equivalently proportional or whatever to the whole difficulty in most cases. So take a look at a course card here in just a second. Especially for neutral holes, for semi-daunting holes and for daunting holes. And again, the semi is from the decider die. When we roll that with the other dice, the decider die, when you have a semi quality, so semi-daunting we see there, that decides whether it is yes daunting or no daunting. It's basically like half daunting. Half the time when the decider die comes up, when it's yes, it is going to be daunting, and when it comes up no, it isn't. So that's one of the ways in these games that play has been able to further differentiate or add layers to the ranking systems, if you will. So here is the hole card, or a hole card, the 7th at Kapalua. I'm showing this because it is one of the courses that comes with the game. You will see you have 4 dice faces right here, right? You've got 2, 3, 4, and 5. That is going to indicate a course control number of 4. So this hole is pretty difficult. Now, there aren't any course traits here that are going to add even more difficulty to it, or some take it away. But in this case, you got 4 out of 6 face rolls, which is 2/3 of the time. You're going to end up going through the course control mechanism, which is, so for the best golfers, it's a little less fruitful for them, if you will, most of the time. It's going to lead you through what tends to be a little bit tougher of a mechanism to get birdies. It's going to offer a little more chance probably at bogeys. It's kind of like, I like to consider it an equalizer, the course control, because sure, there are some checks for golfer qualities in this, but a lot of it's going to be based on the course itself, and so every golfer's playing the hole pretty much the same way, and so they're going to experience it for the most part in similar ways. There's obviously times that you're going to hit a bad shot, maybe go into the water. You might hit a good shot, and it still gets maybe you end up in a divot or something like that. You don't see the results to say, oh, it ends up in a divot on this card here. But there are ways to be able to write the narrative in your head as you're playing as to why something goes wrong, and that's one of the nice things about this game too. So you have your course control indicator right up there. Now the other part of this is the whole result grid. So you've got 21 different combinations there. And so we read the black and the silver. So we get that white die result of, let's say we rolled a 4 on the white die. Then we take black and silver. And let's say we got the black die was 5 and the silver die was 2. Well, we read it in ascending order, so that's a 25. And so then we would go to the whole result grid, and you can see on there that there is a square. Now, what's a square mean? Well, let's do this, and this will give us our various charts that we're going to look at in the game book for each of these. So, and this isn't all, it's most of them. Sometimes there's some boutique or specialized ones, like there can be an OB for out of bounds, but these are most of them. The circle's for Golf Cam Green. The square is for Golf Cam Course. We have like this diamond with dots, which is considered the sand or the bunker. And if you notice, there's a little superscript 2 there. That would mean in his second shot. So let's say you're on a par 4 and you get that. That means that your second shot, your approach to the green, ended up in the bunker. The rough one is right up here, and it looks like almost kind of like just grass, thick grass. And that would be on your first shot, Golf Cam Rough. You'd go to that chart. Trees is going to be the 2 leaves on just a branch or whatever there coming off, and then the water droplet, which is usually going to end up being a bogey. This would be on your second shot on a par 4. That would be water on your approach, most likely. So once you get these, the course control mechanism then takes the green die roll, and you go to the chart with that, and that should parse out what further check you then need to do in order to determine what kind of a putt you're going to end up having. So we're almost done with the hole cards, but there's a couple of other things that we just need to mention, and most of all, it's what I would call the course difficulty traits. These things can either kind of multiply in a bad way, or it can kind of like ease off in a good way. It's, you know, it's not. You can't always just say that added course control number, it makes it more difficult, because if it's cordial, then your chances of a birdie are going to improve if you're a good putter, if you're a good clutch putter, or if the golfer is a good clutch putter. But what we have is we have course difficulty traits: daunting, which means that the course itself plays really tough. So any of those squares get factored in. So when it tells you to go to the GolfCam course chart, it's going to ask you whether the hole is daunting or cordial most of the time. If it's daunting, that means it's extra tough. If it's cordial, it means it's extra easy. You know, these like negative traits, sometimes you could have a hole that is neutral, but you get one roll that asks, is it a daunting hole? And there's no corresponding check if it's cordial. So if it's daunting, let's say you have a clutch putt for par. Well, it's not daunting, so then you have a clutch putt for birdie. So that gives you the opportunity for that. So this is where some of this, you know, positive and negative traits, they start to kind of like help some people out more than others, right? It's not some more than others. It's like they kind of work together, and each golfer can have some uniqueness to each hole, with that being playing pretty similar for everybody. So you have daunting and cordial, and those can have the dots next to them. So the decider die in those cases would, whether it's daunting or whether it's normal, whether it's cordial, whether it's normal, in those half cases. The other thing here that we will talk about that I don't have shown here is the direct trait for the course difficulty traits. And the direct trait, it's often found on shorter par 5s and short par 4s. It can also be on a par 3. Not too many of those in the play universe, but they can be there. What that means is that on a golf hole, let's say it's par 5, usually what that means is that to get to the green in regulation, they're always going to figure that you're going to take 2 putts to get your par. And so the green in regulation is going to take you 3 shots to get there. What direct does is say, this hole has a chance that you can get there in 1 shot less. So on a par 5, you may be able to get to the green in 2 shots and have a putt for eagle. So this hole offers pretty much all golfers an opportunity, although it's usually a pretty small opportunity, but it's a better opportunity than basically never on non-direct holes. But on par 5s, then you also do have a little bit of a case where the golfer, if they're a long hitter, could also get to one of the non-direct holes. But par 4, direct would mean that on your tee shot, you might be able to reach the green with the drive, and drive the green and maybe be able to get an eagle on that. Direct on a par 3 would mean that it has a very good opportunity to get a hole in 1 and to get your eagle that way. So that's what the direct trait means. The green difficulty is underneath in these pictures down here, challenging versus friendly. And here is one that's, so down here at the bottom we have semi-daunting, we have semi-challenging, semi-cordial, and full friendly. Friendly greens means that you're going to have a chance at a potentially easier chance at a birdie based on the green's difficulty, as opposed to if it's challenging green, that means there's probably a lot of undulation. Maybe the green is a little faster than normal. Maybe it's like a windblown green compared to the rest of the course, and it just adds difficulty. Maybe there's a lot of downhill putts towards the hole or something like that. It just adds a lot of difficulty there. The other part of the green that is down here in the bottom right is this caution symbol, this triangle with an exclamation point in the middle. This adds difficulty as well. And as you can see, this one's from Champions Course, the Augusta National Course. First hole has one of these guys. So if the course controls and you end up with a putt that comes off of any of this stuff that is in what we will eventually show you is what I would call the normal putting diagram, that putt has to go 1 degree harder. So if you've watched any of my tournaments, you know, you've got this like double difficult, moderate, easy, gimme, you know, all of that. So if on the chart it says you've got a difficult putt, you're going to make it double difficult if it's got that exclamation point, that caution symbol. So this is kind of like the anatomy of the hole card. We've gone over it before in the tournaments, but for anybody new and anybody who just really wants to hear more about what makes this game tick, that's what we're doing here. We're going to take a look now at the golfer card. And here's a couple from the 2000 stars. We got Vijay Singh and David Howell, a couple of golfers at sort of each end of the spectrum. These show a lot of the traits. And again, it's like a positive versus negative. And they're split up into areas. And you've got woods, irons, putting, recovery, and experience. So for the wood proficiency, so woods are going to be broken up into several categories. And you end up having like good versus poor. For proficiency with woods, you're going to have legend and king. Like in the case of Vijay Singh here, he's got a combination of semi-legend and king. Okay? So that means he's pretty good. And the way that these cards get built is that you can combine these traits as well. So combining the traits further accentuates, let's say, your driving accuracy and such. And also will influence, in the end, your scoring average. Poor for woods, we don't see it on either of these cards, but it would be yeoman or duffer. Those really come into play when you're talking about maybe designing cards that are kind of for single digit or maybe even double digit handicappers, but they do come up here on occasion. Sometimes you get golfers. I could have put a couple cards up here that had this, and that's just, it means that they don't really do well with the driver. And when the golfer controls, so remember if we were to go back and look at that first card that had the 4 degrees of course difficulty, if you roll on the white die a 1, then this card, a lot of the traits from this card would be checked, or traits from this card would mostly be checked in order to determine how the result of the hole would come out. For wood length, there is bomber. You can see VJ is a bomber, so that's the good side of things. That's the guy who can hit it a long way. Not always good in the game though. There are some cases where a bomber can lead to an inaccurate drive, because a lot of times the characteristic is that if you drive it a long way, you're also a little less accurate. There's also the poor of puny, which means that they're just, I always like to think of like Corey Pavin as a guy who just was on the smaller side and just didn't, he was always kind of like at the low end. I remember him winning a major, and he was hitting like a long iron into one where a lot of the guys were hitting like short irons on approach. So bomber versus puny, and then the accuracy component, and as much accuracy as ability to, let's say, use the hook, or the draw, or the fade, shape the shots, shaper versus scatter. That's kind of another one of the golf traits. Then we get to the irons, which are the iron proficiency is going to be champion or hero. And the opposite side of that are going to be utility and hacker. And again, you can combine these things. You can see David Howell is both champion and utility. And so that kind of like fine tunes the ability for, a lot of these cards that are like the play sets are based on statistical analysis. The traits are assigned that way, but also, sometimes you got to go from history and historical accounts of the way guys played. But all things considered, it's also like scoring average. You want to try and dial somebody in, and you want to try and, like in this case, David Howell, you're going to try and have somebody who comes out in the end looking and playing a lot like the guy plays. And so maybe in the case of Howell, he can hit some really good irons, but sometimes he hits some really bad ones too. And so you'll get a mixture of those things. You get iron accuracy, especially important on, we'll say, par threes. Not especially, but they can come up there and it can lead to some really good results if somebody is laser. There's no opposite quality for laser. Then also under the irons, it will come up. There's a short game component. Good is soft, poor is stone. So you've got like hands of stone. You have no feel for the short game. And then finally, we have those other three at the bottom. Putting, which is really clutch putting in the clutch. Good is gold. And for the clutch putting, a gold putter, when you roll the green D6, 1 through 5, when rolled, are made putts. 6 is a miss. Rust is a 1 is a make. 2 through 6 is a miss. So you can see that you go from like 16% make to 84% make from rust to gold. And then again, you can add the decider die to further, semi-rust is a 1 to 2 is make, 3 through 6 is miss. So recovery skills, good is sandy for the bunker, bad is chunky. Okay, so you've got those two that kind of go together. And then good for recovery, or out of the trees and out of the rough, be master is good, workman is bad. Okay, and then for experience, the History Maker games, they try to add some intangible stuff, and that's what is kind of like under this particular category. Icon is a veteran of the tour for probably at least 6-7 years. Semi-icon is probably in the 4 to 5 range. Neutral is maybe 3 to 4. Semi-prospect 1 to 2, and prospect is like rookie. So icon, it's going to lend itself to some good things. Prospect usually not so good, and these things often come up on the Golf Cam Experience chart, which usually gets generated from the golfer control mechanism. Okay, and then you have dynamic and gilded, and those are generated on the charts, the whole charts for the golfer control mechanism as well. So dynamic means, let's take David Howell. He has dynamic on his card. He has champion and utility, right? So he can hit some really good shots. He can hit some bad ones, but he'll also hit some amazing shots. Like the dynamic is almost like he just hit something that nobody would believe. And maybe it's maybe not necessarily in a clutch situation, but just his game is the type that he can just hit one of those knock down the pin kind of shots. Gilded is sort of like the other. Maybe he's got good rankings, but then he's gilded, so then he hits a really bad shot in certain cases. So the other thing that I don't have listed here on the card on this analysis, but let's just mention it here while we're talking about it, because we just have a little bit of time here. This 1B is the tournament rating, and if you're going to run tours, these are going to be important. 1B versus 4B. 1 is kind of like the major category. 1 is really good. 1 and 2 are really good. 3 and 4 middle. 5, 6, 7 bad, and then A, B, and C further differentiates it. So, we'll talk more about that when we get into a future one. So this is where I'm going to stop it for now. Again, this is really high cut. If you have any questions about any of this, feel free to put the comment in. Anything that seems to go towards game, when I say game book here, we're leading up to let's just play out a hole. Like I want to show you playing out a hole, and it's not going to be me rolling the dice. Probably I'm going to just kind of stage it, because I don't I want to be able to show you a sequence from the book, but I don't necessarily want to show you the book in total, because that wouldn't be fair. So, but we will show you how this works. Probably play a couple holes, because I think we should show how the golfer control mechanism works, and then the course control mechanism, and then probably that, remember I told you that third mechanism, which is when you roll a 6, and that's kind of a special case. If you watch the tournaments, you know that it tends to be a kind of a quick wrap-up result, but there's some other stuff that we don't usually get into because it's not always favorable to do it. So, but we'll talk more about that next episode. Again, leave comments, hit the like if you want to share this as something to kind of get people started learning the game. It's a great game. I've played countless tournaments, and we'll be back here again shortly for some more. We'll do another one of these how-tos info sessions on History Maker Golf. This is Earl. Thanks a lot, and enjoy rolling your games on your tabletop. And God bless.